Ladies and gentlemen, Garfield and Friends.
The world's most unique cat ever. Orange, fat. No, not him. Orange, fat, lazy, eats food like it's going out of style. The one and only Garfield. This fella has been consistently in my life since I was a very young boy. Whether it was the comic strips, the novels, or his Instagram channel, yes, he does have one. Garfield was always around. My favourite genre as far as he is concerned is the cartoons. Okay, cartoons and the comics, it's a tie. There have been a few incarnations of this, but I specifically will be focused on Garfield and Friends. The show featured adapted storylines from the Garfield comic strips, along with the US Acres comic strips. Both were created by US cartoonist Jimdavis. It combined the two strips into animated form, and each episode was divided into 3 segments. The first and third segments comprising of mini episodes featuring Garfield and his little adventures, along with his owner John Arbuckle and his dog Odie. Sandwiched in between this is the US Acres show, or Orson's Farm. The show featured the adventures of a group of barnyard animals, with the main character being Orson the pig. He is accompanied by his friends Roy the rooster, the loudmouth prankster, Wade the cowardly duck, the sibling sheep Bo and Lanolin, Sheldon the egg, and Booker the chick. The show ran for a total of 7 seasons at 121 episodes, with 363 segments to be precise. Now Garfield, as I said earlier, was always around for me as a kid. I saw his early animated iterations, but it was mostly the comic strips that caught my attention. It was not until when I was living in Nigeria that I came across Garfield and Friends via a recorded VHS tape, which had been done from a relative going abroad and recording various shows and fitting it onto one VHS tape. Yes, things were very different in those times. I was immediately hooked as a young lad, still into my cartoons. The goofy, wacky nature of the show was a big appeal. The dialogue was very well written that, looking back on it as an adult, it actually holds up and it doesn't feel too outdated. The intro theme songs were very catchy, and whenever I saw Garfield in the comics, those theme songs would immediately spring to mind. Over the course of its 7-season run, there were 2 different theme songs. Seasons 1 and 2 came out to Friends Are There, with Garfield jostling for screen appearances with the US Acres crew. And then season 3 to 7 was the We Are Ready to Party, which featured a montage of previous episodes. Now, unlike a number of animated shows I have talked about previously on this channel, Garfield and Friends was nothing more than just cartoony, wacky hijinks. It was not exactly story and plot driven in terms of progressing ongoing story arcs. It was just simply a fun time for the kiddies. Garfield loved his naps and he loved his food, so almost every episode, if he wasn't napping, he was stuffing his gut full of food. Little diversion, there was an episode where he did a parody of himself writing and starring in his own TV show, doing nothing but eating and sleeping, with everybody changing channels at the same time. He did go on to have several adventures as he had a big imagination, so there would be scenarios where he was the hero of sorts. He was, however, regularly tormented by neighborhood cat Nermo, the world's cutest kitty cat.
Because the world's cutest kitty cat has to announce he is the world's cutest kitty cat.
Try saying that 3 times fast. Garfield had plenty of fun, always mailing him to Abu Dhabi. Why this was chosen as the destination, who knows? Australia is actually on the other side of the world, so wouldn't it have made more sense for Garfield to mail him there so Nerma would be far, far away? This is just a very random thought. I always thought that Nerma was a girl, considering that Desiree Guyote, a female voiceover artist, did the voice. Now, with his enormous appetite, no food was off limits. Well, mostly all food. Garfield absolutely hated raisins. His poor suffering owner John Arbuckle was a cartoonist, almost a play on real-life Garfield creator Jimdavis, who, on top of dealing with Garfield's antics and looking after Odie, is a lovable loser with the ladies, and he never seems to get any luck with the ladies. This is a kid show. Get your mind out of the gutter, please. He was also seen getting rejected left, right and centre in the comic strips, and it was pretty much the same here. He did manage to have an on-again, off-again relationship with veterinarian Liz Wilson, but more often than not, the dates would go comically wrong. Oh, poor John. I can definitely relate. You had Odie that followed Garfield around and annoyed him to no end, always slobbering everywhere, licking him and getting kicked off the table, and sometimes getting his own back on Garfield. He didn't talk, he just made a lot of barking noises, sounds and hums. Now that was as far as the characters were in terms of their development. Now looking back on it, it was amazing that they managed to produce 121 episodes. Now of course a lot of it was adapted from the comic strips, but still, that's actually a great feat. The US Acres had more of an ensemble. It was led by Orson the Pig, who had a limitless imagination, always daydreaming about going on heroic adventures, which usually came about from the books he read and then he began to sleep dream. And there was Roy the Rooster, who was a loud, brash and big prankster, always pulling practical jokes on the others for a laugh. Wade Duck was the cowardly duck who was scared of everything, and he always had his little trademark.
Oh, help! Help! I knew this would happen! Oh, help! Oh, dread! Help!
There was the duo of Sheldon and Booker. Sheldon is an unhatched chick, while Booker is a full-blown chick. You had the sheep siblings, Bo and Nanolin. Nanolin was bossy and loud, whilst Bo was more cool and laid back. Orson had the task of looking after the farm and assigning different tasks to the rest of the gang. At the same time, Orson had to protect the farm from outsiders. One was the Weasel, who loved him some chickens. He always plotted to steal them whenever he could. Then there was Orson's big bully brothers, who always tormented him, but would often get their comical comeuppance. Like Garfield, there was self-contained episodes with no real ongoing story arcs. Every now and then you would get a cameo from Garfield, but there was no real crossover from the two shows. Garfield and Friends was a big success in the US, but it ran into several issues. It had become a very expensive show to make, and the Saturday morning cartoon format was in decline by the mid-1990s. CBS, the network that was distributing the series, had made several budget cuts, having lost the rights to the NFL in 1994, which meant them losing a significant amount of revenue. As a result, the show would have a significantly reduced budget to produce future seasons. As it was doing well ratings-wise in syndication, the producers made the choice to cancel the show after the 7th season. Upon its initial release, Garfield and Friends did come in for some harsh criticism. Charles Solomon of the Los Angeles Times wrote in 1988, "Garfield has lost all his feline qualities and become a crabby little man in a cat suit. With more than 3,500 Garfield products on the market, does anybody really need to see more of this character?" Gene Seymour of the Pittsburgh Press rated the show as a D-, saying that the show tries too hard to be hip and the jokes are flat. But it thankfully wasn't all negative, and some saw the show as a gateway to better produced future animation. Animation historian Jerry Beck stated that the quality of Garfield and Friends, when compared to other 1980s animated TV shows, will foreshadow the higher quality animation boom coming in the next decade. Now, given all of the quality late 80s and 90s shows that we got, I'd say he was bang on the money with that theory. Now here comes my favourite part of the animated shows, the voice acting. The voice of Garfield, as every Garfield fan knows, is voiced by Lorenzo Music. He brought a cool, calm and collected presence to the character. It was very one-tone, but it suited the character to a T. Lorenzo had been voicing Garfield since 1982, when Garfield made his animated television debut in Here Comes Garfield. Lorenzo was cast after one audition of Garfield, and according to creator Jimdavis, I looked at the room full of voice actors, and then in the corner I saw Lorenzo quietly licking himself. Okay. Not sure what to make of that. But Lorenzo was very successful with the character, and he voiced him through various other Garfield incarnations, including Garfield and Friends, TV commercials, video games, and the 12 Garfield TV specials. He's also synonymous with playing the voice of Peter Venkman on the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, which is where I first became familiar with music, having watched the previous Ghostbusters cartoons first. He has an extensive CV going back to the late 1960s, and he was a very prolific voice actor in the voiceover world right up until his tragic passing on August 5th, 2001. He was aged 64. Tom Hughes was the voice of John Arbuckle on the show, But that wasn't his only role, as he also voiced Roy Rooster on US Acres. Two very contrasting characters, with one loud and outrageous, and the other timid but goofy. Julie Payne was the voice of Lanolin and Liz Wilson, a veteran actress with over 19 credited shows on IMDb and has a CV that goes back to the 1970s. Greg Berger was the primary voice of Odie and Orson on the show. He also voiced several guest characters, including the Weasel. Berger has a ridiculous voiceover resume that is right up there with the likes of Rob Paulson and Maurice LaMarche, with over 345 credits listed on his IMDb page. He is a true voiceover veteran. But Berger pales in comparison to the one and only voice god, Frank Welker. Any cartoon that you watched from the 1970s up until now, you have 99.9% heard Welker's voice, as he has done just about everything in voiceover, with over 800 credits to his name. Simply astonishing. On the show, he voices Booker, Sheldon and Bo, with effortless transition between the three characters. There are other guest characters he voices on the show, but these three are his main characters. Desiree Goyette voices Nermal the kitten, as I mentioned earlier. I'm pretty sure I butchered the name, so I do apologize. An American singer-songwriter who did compose some tunes for some of Garfield's TV specials, as well as on Garfield and Friends itself, and has a voiceover resume that goes back to the 1980s. Legendary voiceover actress the late June Foray had a reoccurring role on the show and voiced over 18 different guest characters. Finally, finishing off this section with Howard Morris, who voiced the coward duck, Wade. Howard was primarily a comedic actor, and his body of work goes far back as 1949 in the Admiral Broadway Revenue. His legacy was in the voiceover world, and he voiced many animated characters on recognized shows like The Flintstones, Plastic Man, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and DuckTales. I should briefly mention the connection between Peter Venkman of the Ghostbusters and Garfield. If you've already seen my animated Ghostbusters video, you know where this is going. Lorenzo Music voiced both Garfield and Peter Venkman, the first voice actor on the cartoon show. Actor Bill Murray played Peter Venkman in the Ghostbusters movies and voiced Garfield in the live-action movies that starred Breckin Meyer and Jennifer Love Hewitt. Also, voice actor Dave Collier was the second voice actor to voice Venkman on the cartoon, and he gave a Bill Murray-esque portrayal of the character. For me, the undisputed voice of Garfield will always be Lorenzo Music, and his portrayal of Peter Venkman is the better of the two voice actors on Ghostbusters. Now, watching Garfield and Friends in retrospect, I find that it is more of a comfort show for me, with the silly slapstick and the goofy tones. The humour I may have found funny when I was younger, but it doesn't have the same impact as an adult. Given the show was a cartoon made for kids, well, duh! But there have been a couple of times where I found myself laughing out loud. One episode in particular that stands out, and it's not even Garfield himself, but it's from the US Acres Orson's Farm episode, Season 5, Episode 14, Who Done It? When three dogs visit Orson's farm and they're actually looking for work, and their names are Who, What, and Where. Then all manner of shenanigans happen, with the rest of the gang trying to get their names but keep hilariously failing to do so.
Who is the guy in the tool shed?
No, who is fixing the roof?
I don't care about the roof. Where is the name of the guy in this shed?
No, where is the name of the guy plowing the field?
Who's plowing the field?
No, who's fixing the roof?
Okay, may not be as funny now, but it certainly gave me some belly laughs back in the day. The show is yet another one of those nostalgic trips down memory lane. Sometimes you remember them quite fondly, and you revisit them and they bring back great memories that you had as a kid. And then sometimes some retro shows don't quite age as well. But for me, Garfield and Friends is definitely a fun trip down nostalgia lane. The show had a number of episodes which broke out into musical numbers, and some I liked, and some not so much. But at times I have lived vicariously through Garfield. I mean, imagine being able to just eat, sleep, and not have a single care in the world while your owner does all the cleanup work. Amazingly, Garfield did have some luck with romance, with Penelope, his on-off love interest on the show. In the comics, his girlfriend is Arlene, but she makes a single cameo appearance on Garfield and Friends. He didn't work out, He had no money, lived with his owner, bullied Odie and Normal, but he still managed to attract a couple of girls. Even in the animated goofy cartoon world, the girls loved the orange, fat, bad boy. Or cat. This show is my favorite animated iteration of Garfield. I just have not been able to get into the other ones, like the Garfield show, which coincidentally has one of the stars of this show featuring there with Frank Welker in the lead role as Garfield. Greg Berger also reprises his role as Odie, and Judy Payne returns as Liz. The lack of Lorenzo music and the style of animation are just a bit too jarring for me. But the show did have a good run with over 107 episodes over 5 seasons, so it did very well. I have just about said everything that I want to say on Garfield and Friends, so I'll finish off by saying one of my all-time favorite animated shows from the late 80s and 90s. It is a silly, fun, light-hearted, goofy escape from the daily hustles of life. Pure unadulterated cartoon fun. Garfield is a certified legend. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and if you want to see more, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.